Hi everybody, welcome to our summer webinar series. Hi everybody, hello. Welcome to our summer webinar series. This is English teacher methodology. Okay, well, it's a big pleasure to invite you to be here. Don't forget to register on Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, and Google sites so you can have access to different information and you can have information about some webinars and any other courses related to our work. Next, please. Please type your questions in the comment section with your name and place of living. The answer to your questions and comments will be replied by our guest speaker at the end of the webinar in the question time section. When finishing the webinar, we will share a link for you to have access to the exit ticket, which will be available for 20 minutes. Now, it's a big pleasure to introduce Ms. Nefti. Hello, Ms. Nefti.
Hello, Gabriel. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Hello, teachers. My name is Nefti Fortes, and I'm here today once more. And despite I live in Spain, and here it is quite late, almost midnight. However, I'm really glad to welcome you all to the 9th webinar session in English Teachers in Peru Community Live. It's a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity again to introduce our amazing guest speaker, our well-known Mr. Leo Mercado. Originally from Queens, New York, Leo has been in the educational field for more than 25 years. As a language program administrator, he has worked as an academic coordinator, academic branch manager, project manager, test center administrator, and director of studies. Over the years, he has led large-scale projects to create and implement diverse learning platforms, as well as several national-wide projects with Peru's Ministry of Education and other entities. His most notable accomplishments include a successful international accreditation process with the CEA, along with a successful preliminary inspection with EQUALS final inspection in August 2020. He is now an entrepreneur who is heading his own professional consultancy firm, NYC Learning Solutions. As a speaker, he has presented at national and international conferences in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and most of Latin America, including TESOL International, IATFL, EQUALS, MaxTESOL, and ABLA. As an author or co-author, he has numerous international publications. Leo also holds a master's degree in education with a specialization in curriculum and instruction from the University of Phoenix. He also holds an executive MBA with a specialization in project management from the New York Institute of Technology. In today's webinar, Mr. Mercado is going to offer us a presentation titled The Magic of Speaking Virtually. In our new COVID-19 stay-at-home reality, there are some things that haven't changed, such as the need to get our students to speak a lot and well. In this presentation, we will see how we can get our students to produce both quantity and quality when it comes to output in our virtual classrooms. We will discuss activity and task types, feedback, and learning strategies that can get students to perform well, as well as identify their strengths and opportunities for improvement. Let's welcome Mr. Leo Mercado. Mr. Leo Mercado, the audience is all yours.
Thank you very much, Nefti. Thank you, Gabriel, Mariela, and the entire team at English Teachers in Peru. It's a great pleasure to be here for the initiation of this webinar series. And again, it's always an honor to be with the community, to be able to share issues and concerns that involve all of us in the work that we do each and every day. So I will now share, I believe I can do this now. Let's take a look and share screen. Okay, and we're going to jump right in here. And let's see. Let me jump right in. Get this out of the way. Okay. And we're almost there. Very good. We will now present. And I want to make sure everybody can see that. Can everybody see the presentation, the cover page? Or the cover slide? Just to make sure. We'll record on this computer. Can everybody see that? I just want to make sure everybody can.
Yes, we can, Leo.
Excellent, very good. So today we're going to talk about the magic of speaking virtually. Now, speaking is something that we've always been focused on, getting our students to speak. It's not an easy thing. Some of our students, especially when they study for the first time, they're a little on the shy side, they're afraid to make mistakes. So it's always a challenge to get our students to speak their minds, speak to their fullest potential, and speak well. So today we're going to cover all the bases. We're going to focus on how to get our students to produce a lot of language and how to produce language that is consistent with the standards that we're trying to get them to achieve. Okay, so let's move forward and let's begin. So if we go back about a year, a lot has happened. It's already a year. Back in 2020, March specifically, that's when everything happened all over the place, when the pandemic, the states of emergency were initiated in many, many different countries around the world, and everything started becoming foggy, and the path that we thought was very clear all of a sudden was difficult to discern. So that also implied that we changed practically overnight from what we used to do, which was working in our classrooms, to working in what would be a very new environment for a great many people, great many ELT professionals. So some of us were accustomed to working virtually, but most of us were not. And so this was not a matter of choice. We were all obliged to shift from what had been our comfort zone, from what had been the classrooms that we cherished so much, to an entirely new environment where things were new, things were unknown. We had to learn. There was a learning curve. And so that brought a lot of challenges along the way. And something that we did not want to do, obviously, was to copy and paste what we had already been doing in our physical classrooms. This move to the virtual environment would require us to bring out our very best in terms of creativity, adaptability, versatility, and open-mindedness, okay? Being able to look at things from outside the box, getting our students to learn as much as possible, to take advantage of the opportunities, to continue their second language acquisition process, but not just simply trying to repeat a formula that would not work in a totally new environment. So this is something that obviously we learned very quickly. And the question became, and still is to this day, how can we get our students to speak in the virtual age? So what we're going to do is we're going to see a great many different options. The first thing we need to consider is that when we're trying to get our students to speak, from the very beginning of the learning process, when they are initiating their language learning experience at a pre-A1 or elementary level, and as they work through the basic level, pre-intermediate, intermediate, upper intermediate, and eventually advanced, depending on what their goals are, they're always going to have to be, or we're going to have to work very hard to make sure that their language production is consistent with international standards. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that the activities and the tasks are well chosen or well designed, that they are graded appropriately, that the language focus is consistent from the very beginning throughout their course of studies, that the language level for the input that we use is also appropriate to make sure that our students comprehend what they're listening to and what they're reading so that they can also respond and speak accordingly. And we always have to focus on both accuracy and fluency. It's not one or the other, it's actually both. So today we're going to look at a lot of different ways in which we can cover all of these bases, so to speak, if we use baseball terminology, and we can get our students to feel good about the opportunities they're going to have to speak with you and with their classmates in the virtual classroom. So today we're going to look at things like the C method And we're going to learn what that is in a few minutes. We're going to look at CITs, classroom interaction techniques. We're going to look at how we can personalize the lesson to make it more relevant for students so they will want to talk more, they'll want to speak up. We're going to look at test-taking strategies. We're going to look at cooperative learning techniques, problem-based learning, critical thinking strategies. We're going to look at how we can Peruvianize our lessons to get our students to, to make that connection between what the lesson is trying to purport and also what our students already know and their background knowledge. And finally, we'll take a look at languaging, which is looking or identifying the language resources that our students will be able to use to help them speak more and speak better, depending on the task that they're working with, okay? So we have a lot of work to do today. We got a lot to cover. So let's look at the C method. And the C method is something, it's a term that I made up, and it refers to, I make up a lot of names, and I've been using them over the years. So the C method refers to the components method, which means that we want our students to put together or assemble a speaking turn that consists of multiple components. And if we make those components clear and simple, our students will be able to produce the language very easily. So what do I mean? Let's take a look at an example. So for example, if we want to start off with something simple, we can use the 1 + 1 + 1 rule. And what is that? For example, if we want our students to tell us about something, new vocabulary, right? Maybe we're teaching new vocabulary, and we want our students to tell us what the vocabulary means and to give us an example, and then finally give us something from their personal experience that relates to the word. So I think it's going to become clearer once we see the example. Now, in the chat box, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about the different kinds of places that we can see or visit in a city? What are the places that we can find in the city like Lima, Arequipa, Piura, Tumbes, Tacna, Hilo, and so many others that I've had the honor to visit over the years? If somebody visits your city, where should they go? What kinds of buildings are there? What kinds of places can they go to for different services, for different sightings? What can they visit? Give me some examples. Let's take a look at the chat box. Let's make this a little interactive. All right, there we go, chat box right there. Okay, come on, guys. Okay, well, this is being also streamed through Facebook, so I understand that some of you may not be able to type some examples. But if we look, we do a little brainstorming, and we identify different places. And here now, we see some picture representations of things that we can find or places that we can find in the city. So what do you think this is? Now there's a clue. You see the golden arches. So this is a type of place. It's a type of restaurant. It's not just any restaurant. It's a type of a restaurant. So what kind of a restaurant is it? Now this is kind of this little guy. Well, actually not so little. This big guy can only be found in a certain place. Okay. What is this place? And where can we see other animals like him and many different ones? What about this place where we see airplanes taking off? So we want our students to identify the different places. And then what we want them to do is to tell us, what is the place? I mean, give us a definition of the place. So for example, we might say, well, what is this? And the students will say, well, it's a park. Well, please tell me, what is a park? So a park, and let me type this, you want the students to follow a certain format for the answer. A park is a place where, right? There we go in the chat box. A park is a place where people can find trees and flowers and ponds and even geese, right? Depending on the park, right? You have geese and ducks and that kind of thing, all right? It's a place where you can go to relax, okay? With nature all over the place. Now, that's number one. Now, what's the second one? What's the second piece of information you have to give me? For example, if you live in Lima, there is a park in Miraflores. It's called Kennedy Park, okay? Now you give me a personal experience. I went to Kennedy Park Friday night. I went to buy some souvenirs. So you see, you want the student to structure the response going from general to more specific to a personalized example in association with a vocabulary word. Okay? So you want the student to elaborate and to produce an extended turn, what we call a turn, a speaking turn, which means the student is producing language. Whatever the student produces when she or he is participating, that's a turn. We want them to produce as much as possible. If we give them a sort of template, a mental template, it will make it easier for them to speak up. For example, if we go to university is a place where people go to study for a career. In Arequipa, you see, I know both of them, and I can't remember them right now. That's terrible. When you're giving a presentation, you can't remember in Arequipa, you have San Agustin University. And my brother, he studied there, right? So now the student is giving a personal example. My brother is studying there. He wants to be an engineer. There you go. So you have a general definition, an example in the student's hometown, and now a personalized piece of information that relates to what you're trying to teach. And you can do that with every single one. Now, you want to maximize participation, right? So you can either let the students choose, or you can assign the different places, or you can let them work together. If you have breakout rooms, you want them to work together. Definition, example, personalized information. Let them work together. Let them choose. Let them put them in breakout rooms. You give one group these three, you give another group these three, what have you. And this will help them. If they work with the mental template, they'll know that one sentence or a phrase, which is not a sentence, a phrase is a bunch of words together, they will not be sufficient. That will not be acceptable. Okay, that's very important. So this is how it's applied. And you want to, if you're working with a slide like we do here at NYC, and this is something that we use for our students in the regular English courses and also in our 5-star program for teachers. You'll see that we give them examples of the language. There are, it's called, it's in, it's very, it has. Kind of remind our students or the participants what kind of language they should be using when they're describing the place. And then some guiding questions, right? Where is it? What is it called? Do you have a personal experience? Okay, so this is supposed to help the students. Again, produce the language with a little help, a little scaffolding, which is the word that we use very often in education. We give them a gentle push in the right direction, okay? So you have images, you have prompts, and you have the mental template to help the students speak more. Let's take a look at something else. So for example, here, we see a mall. A mall is a place where people go to shop. It is usually very large and enclosed. Remember, a mall is not a shopping center. A shopping center, when we speak in English, the shopping center is open. Okay, it doesn't have a roof. It's not enclosed. It's open, right? A mall is very large and it has a roof. It's enclosed, right? So that has to be clarified. There is one in Jesus Maria for those of you who live in Lima, and those of you who are Peruvian. There might be some of you who aren't, but there is one in Jesus Maria called Aventura Plaza Salaberry. And I went there the other day with my family. We bought a new TV at, I think Paris doesn't exist anymore. We went to buy a new TV at Saga or whatever they have there. Yeah. And so you're personalizing it. You want the student to give you more. Now remember, the 1 + 1 + 1 rule is the minimum amount of language. You want them to produce more language if they can, right? So this is the minimum template. This is what you want them to do. They have to know this. This is the minimum amount of language that you expect. Now, if they can produce more language, little by little, they'll be trained over time if you apply this in different situations, different activities, different themes, and they'll be able to produce more language consistently, because automatically they'll know it's not 1 + 0, it's 1 + 1 + 1. So I have to elaborate. I have to give a lot of information every time I participate. Okay, so the speaking triad. So this is something else that I'd like to introduce to you. I talk about this all the time because I invented it, so I like people to know it. And it's also very helpful. It's not because I just invented it and I'm trying to be famous, but it is helpful. When we divide the speaking for students in class, it's not just what students do when they're participating in a communicative activity. okay? That would be what we call what I call interactional language. So this is when the students are participating in a communicative activity from a textbook or from the learning platform, from the LMS. And the LMSs, sometimes they come with these activities when it's a blended course, right? When you have platform plus video conferences. And so that's the kind of stuff, the activities that simulate real life situations. But then you have classroom language. And classroom language is also an opportunity. Now, this is what we used to do, some of us used to do in the physical classroom. Okay, so classroom language is anytime students use English in the classroom. It used to be physical, now it's virtual as well, to a lesser extent, but you can still use it. And so this is when students, for example, want to ask you a question. Teacher, I don't understand the grammar, but please explain a little more, please. Okay, so now the student is interacting with the instructor, right? Or the student in a physical classroom might say, or might work with the student next to her or him and say, what is your answer for number 2? Maria says, my answer to number 2 is A. What do you have? I have B. Why do you have A? So now hopefully we're not going to get into an argument, but we have different answers. So we're talking to each other. This you can do in a virtual classroom, right? Because in the virtual classroom, if you send the students into a breakout room, right? Then the students also have to interact and say, okay, what do we have to do, Jason? What do we have to do? What the teacher say? Well, we have to look at the problem and find solution. Okay, let's do it. Maria, let's come out over here. Let's talk. What do you think? And so now we're interacting, right? We're interacting in the breakout room. We have a task. It has to be resolved. And so we're using the language with each other. The last type of speaking that I want to mention is meta language. And this is when the students, for example, we want the students to explain how the grammar works, describe it, right? So for example, what is a participial adjective, or what's the difference between ed and ing? Remember that the participial adjectives, or the participial adjectives, sometimes they're called, they end in ing when you're referring mainly to something, and ed when you're referring to someone. So you want the students to explain this. So these 3 types, if we promote them in our virtual classes, like we used to do in our physical classes, then obviously we're creating more spaces for students to be able to use English. And that's what we want, right? Because we want to take the most advantage of the time that we have with our students. We want them to be able to use English as much as possible. They don't need to speak Spanish. Okay, Spanish they can speak pretty well, or wherever they're learning, right? If they're in Europe speaking Serbian, well, they don't need to practice their Serbian. They need to speak English. Okay, so that's the whole point behind this. Okay, so let's look at the first, the one that we have, CITs, classroom interaction techniques. We're going to look at one. We're going to watch one. Okay, we're going to watch one. And I'd like you, and this is from the Caprica courses that we promote at NYC. And what I'd like you to do mentally is I'd like you to watch, pay close attention. It's very short. It's a very short segment, but there's a lot in it. So I'd like you to identify the 4 steps that you think might make up this is called a comprehension check for instructions. Because remember, classroom interaction techniques, which is the classroom language that I talked about before, there are many different techniques that you can use. I only have time for one today because we have a lot to cover. So this is a comprehension check for instructions. There's also something called a comprehension check for content. There are also concept checks. Okay, so all of these things, today we're only focusing on classroom CITs in terms of the comprehension checks for instructions. I want you to watch the video, identify step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. What does the teacher do? What do the students do? And how does it end? Okay, and then we'll see what you come up. We'll go over the answers, the correct answers together. Okay.
Okay, guys, let's continue. Now you're going to look at the pictures we have here. Okay, then you're going to listen to the conversation, and then you're going to match the pictures with the dates of the week. Okay? Gabriel, what do we have to do?
Okay, so first we'll look at the pictures. Then we'll listen to the conversations, and finally we'll match the pictures with the days of the week.
Good, Gabriel. Please ask the same question to Sebastian.
Okay, Sebastian, what do we have to do?
Okay, first we have to look at the pictures, then we have to listen to the conversation, and finally we have to match the pictures with the days of the week.
Good.
Cassandra, what do we have to do?
Well, first we need to look at the pictures, then we have to listen to the conversation, and finally we have to match the pictures with the days of the week.
Very good, Cassandra. Thank you. Now, class, what do we have to do?
First we have to look at the pictures, then we have to listen to the conversation, and finally we have to match the pictures with the days of the week.
Very good. Excellent. Well done.
Okay, so there is a slight delay, and I'm reading the comments now. And we're going to wait till everybody finishes watching. And there's a slight delay, so I'm going to continue, and I'm going to be reading the comments. So, what are the 4 steps? What do you think are the 4 steps? I'm going to move to the next slide. What are the 4 steps that the procedure consists of? Okay, what are the 4 steps? And let's take a look and see what you come up with. Okay, let me take a look. Oh, wait. Everybody can watch. There's a slight delay. What are the 4 steps? What do you think are the 4 steps? What are the 4 steps that the procedure consists of? Okay, so while we're waiting, I see some. Well, they're not actually advanced level. They're actually beginning B1, but you can do this step with basic 1 students. Okay, you can do this. I've done it. I've seen countless teachers do it when I was the director of 2 institutions, previous very large institutions. Okay, so I see here. So again, just to finish that comment, you can have very basic students do this very easily. Okay, so give the instructions. Okay. Okay, everybody's got the first step. We got to give the instructions to students. Good job. The students repeat the directions. A student repeats the instructions. Well, yeah. Well, actually, the first student doesn't repeat. The first student describes the instructions, right? And then another student repeats the instructions for the instructions that the first student gave. Okay, good. A student repeats the instructions. Well, yeah. Well, actually, the first student doesn't repeat. The first student describes. And then there's choral repetition at the end. Okay, very good. So what we have is we have the teacher referred to the instructions, and then asks 1 student, what are we going to do? The student says, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do, we'll look at the pictures. You want to listen to the well, I don't remember the exact instructions. I think it's listen to the audio, look at the pictures, match the pictures with the days of the week. And then that student asks another student, because the teacher has the intention of making the class more student-centered. In a traditional classroom, it's the teacher who calls on each student 1 by 1. But here the teacher wants her students to ask each other. Okay? So she asks the first time, but then she backs off and she wants the students to ask each other. Yeah? All right. And then at the end, there is choral repetition. And the choral repetition is so that she wants to make sure everybody understands the instructions. Everybody. And so in a physical class, you're looking at the students and you're saying, okay, well, hey, look at that. Javier looks a little lost over there. He's not speaking. Or Denise, look, Denise, hey, Denise, hey, you got the instructions? Denise isn't speaking up. She's got her eyes, she looks a little lost. So when you have a physical class, you look at it. Now in a virtual class, you can call on each student one by one. The choral repetition probably isn't going to work unless everybody has their cameras on. Yeah. And we know that's an issue. We know that doesn't always work because of the internet limitations sometimes. And some people don't like to turn on their cameras. They're a little shy. So, but at the very least, we should focus on the different tasks. We want different students to explain the instructions. This you can do. You can have all your students, you can do comprehension checks for each task, rotating among the students, depending how many students you have, okay, in your class. Okay, so maybe the choral won't work as well, but what the individual can. So you might not necessarily use the last one, okay? All right, very good. So again, this depends on the age, this depends on the level, but as I said before, even basic 1 students as young as 9 years old, I've seen it, I've done it, can engage in comprehension checks for instructions. Of course, you have to train your students. This is not something that comes magically, right? This isn't something that comes magically out of nowhere. I mean, we have to train our students over time, yeah? And so as they learn, they get accustomed to it and they feel more comfortable and they can produce more language, okay? We want to train the mind to be able to produce. So here we say, teacher calls on student for instructions. Student calls on another student for instructions. Second student calls on third student for instructions, okay? And teacher calls on class for instructions. So that's the step, okay? And again, once you are accustomed to it, you can move on and the students know what to do. You don't have to explain things anymore. They do automatically. And if you notice, the teacher gestures. She doesn't say, she goes like this, you know? She says, and so that student asks the second student, okay? Okay, so CLTs, cooperative learning techniques, there are about 200 of them. I'm not gonna cover 200 tonight or this afternoon. I'm gonna cover 1, okay? And specifically, I'm referring to what we call think, pair, share. Now, think, pair, share is something that that involves 2 students. That's why it's called pair, yeah? So it's called think, pair, share. You have 2 students, they have to think first. You give them time to think about what they're going to say. You put them together. One student is A, one student is B. A goes first. You tell them how much time they have to speak. They stop once that time has elapsed, and then it's B's turn, okay? There's something very similar for a group, and that's called round robin, and it's the same mechanics. You have A, B, and C, or A, B, C, and D, and each student speaks for a certain amount of time, okay? And so it depends. How much time you give your students depends on the age, on the level. The higher the level, the more time you give them, yeah? The lower the level, you reduce it, okay? So here, for example, we can see, we're gonna talk about vacation. And here, what we want to do is, now this is what students get in advance in their preparation materials. You see adjectives, you see verbs, you see nouns, and this is what the students got through their platform, their virtual platform, right? Okay, so I see some of the comments. No, Martha, on the contrary, yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, they can gesture. The students can understand it. Once the students are trained, you don't really need to explain things anymore. They know automatically. So all you have to do is gesture in a physical class. But anyway, going back to the slide, you give them the language, you remind them of the language that they saw on the platform or on the e-version of their textbook, just to make sure, hey guys, this is the language that we need to use. So now we go to the task, and the task is, what did you do on your last vacation? Okay, where did you go? You give them some guiding questions. Where did you go? Who did you go with? What did you see? What did you do? How long did you stay? Did you enjoy the trip? Why or why not? So you give them some guiding questions, and then you give them 60 seconds, maybe a little longer, it's up to you, to think about what they're going to say, okay? And then you put them together. You put them in pairs. And you can do this in your breakout rooms. It depends on the size of the class, right? Depends on the size of the class. If you have a lot of students and you put them in groups, and then you use round robin instead of think, pair, share, right? Round robin, as I said before, is exactly the same procedure. You just have more people in the group speaking. So A speaks for 60 seconds, B speaks for 60 seconds, C speaks for 60 seconds, D speaks for 60 seconds. And again, tip number one, when you have them go in the breakout rooms, don't just disappear. Go into the breakout rooms and monitor your students. Okay, you need to monitor your students. All right, because then you have no idea what's going on if you don't go and monitor. And so you can give them feedback, right, when they come back. Okay, so here, for example, you might want to give them 60 seconds to think. And then you might want to give them 60 seconds to talk about their vacations. Okay. Here, for example, you might want to give them 60 seconds to think. And then you might want to have them switch their partner. Okay, so Maria and Vivian work together. Now Maria, let me turn this down. Okay, there we go. Now Maria, let's take a look here. Okay, so now Maria is going to work with Fabian. Okay, so Maria works with Fabian, and so on. You switch. Now, the great thing about this activity is you get a lot of language, because remember, they can't stop talking. If they stop talking at any time, you're going around and you're monitoring. If you hear anybody not talking, well, you got to punish them somehow. Be nice, find a nice way to punish them, but you got to find some sort of way to make sure that they speak, because the whole point is that they speak, and that they speak as much as possible. That's the way the activity is designed. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, you want them to interact now with different people, different classmates in the session. You want to put timing. So the first time you give them 60 seconds to speak. The second time you give them 50 seconds to speak. The third time you give them 45 or 40 seconds to speak. Now, why is that? Because according to the research, if you reduce the time, you put pressure on the students to speak, and you speak less, you have to say as much as you did the first time or the second time, but in less time. Usually what that does is it puts pressure on the mind to work more efficiently. And the brain tries to find ways to get those messages out much more concisely, much more rapidly. So you're saying the same. Plus, it's the learning curve, right? You're saying things, you're saying them again, you're modifying, you're adapting. So the brain is constantly improving upon the idea of how you're going to get to say those things. Okay. You have student-to-student questions. If after you say, well, tell me about your vacation, Maria, and then Maria asks Mariela, and then Mariela asks Esteban, and Esteban asks John, right? So you want the students to ask each other. You don't want to be the one calling on students all the time, okay? And then you have the reporting. So Mariela, can you tell me what did one of your partners, what was the vacation like? And so Mariela is going to tell me, well, Leo, he went to the United States. He went to Orlando. He went with his family, and she starts reporting, right? So when you have everybody come back from the breakout rooms, you want them to report. So you want Paola, for example, Paola Cruz. Paola, well, tell me about one of the vacations that you heard about, that somebody told you about. So Paola's going to tell us, right? And then I call on Rochi Guerrero. I said, Rochi, what do you think, Rochi? What did you hear? What was something interesting? And Rochi's going to tell us, well, I spoke to Carla and I spoke to Charles. Now, Charles went to Paris, and he had a hard time because they don't like to speak English in Paris. And Carla went to the Bahamas, and she went with her family. And so she's telling. Now she's talking about two of her partners. Okay. So you want them to report. And again, if you reduce the time, it improves fluency. You want them to say more in less time. It improves fluency. It's actually very good for them. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. And let me just adjust myself here. Okay. All righty. And we're going to look at personalization. Okay. Personalization is very important. Okay. And so here, what we want to do is we want to bring into the mix. We want to bring the student's life into the mix. Okay. I'm gonna move back a little bit because I got to go into the light. It's getting dark over here, all the way in Atlanta. So I gotta. The sun is setting, beginning to set, and I think you'll be able to see me a little better. Okay. All right. Very good. So, well, actually, no, that's actually worse. Okay. Sorry. So anyway, I'll fix that in a second. So the family, you want to do a little brainstorming. You want people to talk about the family, and so you want them to think about some adjectives. What are some adjectives that we can use to describe family members? Yeah. Sorry, guys. So this is a very dynamic. There we go. There we go. I'm almost there. Thank you for understanding. There we go. Okay. So we do a little brainstorming. We see what the students know in terms of the adjectives, what adjectives they might be able to use to describe their family members, whether it's the immediate family, whether it's cousins or aunts and uncles. And so let's see what you know. And then you move, and this is what you had to do before, right? You had to explain that you wanted the students to bring a picture. Now remember that most of the video conference platforms, they have screen sharing now. So students can screen share what they have. And so the idea is that they'd be able to screen share a picture of their family relative, right? It could be their father, their mother, and they share. And you want the students to ask each other. So let's imagine I bring a picture of a family or of a relative. And my classmates in the virtual class will ask me pictures, and I want to share it. I can have it on my computer, so I can screen share. I can show you the picture. It might be in a place, and you want the students to bring a picture with a lot of contextual information in the background. So there's a lot more to ask about. And you want the students to ask each person with their picture at least 4 or 5 questions. And one of those questions has to be, what is she or he like? Because remember, the target language is the adjectives in reference to the personality. So here, for example, this is from the platform, zany and outgoing, irritable, short-tempered, quiet, confident, creative, loud, grumpy, sweet, bookish. This is what they've seen on the platform, right? So this is something that they've already studied. Remember that, that when we get together with students, right? When we bring our students together for speaking practice, communicative practice, we want to recycle. We want them to put into practice what they studied on their own. That's the whole point, right? If you're working with if you're working with a platform, you're studying independently. You're a student. You're working independently. You got to show me what you can do, right? So that's why we're getting together, and you're going to use the language that you've been learning through the platform. Okay, good. Liliana says, my son is shy. Excellent, Liliana. My mom is grumpy. Jeanette. Well, you're not the only one. My mother's a little grumpy too. Okay. And Evelyn, my friend's family is zany. Yeah. Good. Doris, my family is happy. Good, good. And my baby is sweet. That's Edamar. Okay. Great stuff. So the idea is that you use some of these adjectives, and you want your classmates to ask you some more things about your family. What does your father do? Okay. Do they live with you? No, my parents live in their own home. Okay. But I visit them all the time. Now, Wilson says, my older sister is so zany. Well, tell me, what are some of the zany things that she does? Okay. My daughter is outstanding, Iskra, right? So she's saying her daughter's outstanding. She's probably an excellent student. Okay. And she's going to tell us about her studies at the university. Okay. So this is what we want, right? This is what we want. We want the students. You see, everybody's coming up with all these examples because it's about your family. You know your family. You love your family. And so it becomes very easy to use the language rather than something in a textbook or whatever. You know, this is, I mean, all of these activities that you're seeing here were homemade, right? I created them. So, you know, they're not from a textbook, but they do match what the students learned on the platform. Okay. All right. Very good. Let's look at analysis. Now, analysis is important as well because it's a critical thinking skill, right? You look at analysis, evaluation, creation, or synthesis. Those are the three high levels of Bloom's taxonomy, right? For cognitive thinking or for cognition. So we want the students to engage in critical thinking. We want them to analyze. We want them to create. We want them to evaluate. And so here we have a general discussion. This is, again, these are all slides from our English programs that we use either with our 5-star program for teachers or There we go. My son is outstanding. He passes CAE and ECPE. My goodness. Jacqueline Reyes. I know her. We work together. So nice to see you here, Jacqueline. All right. Excellent, Jacqueline. So nice to see you here. Really. It's great when you run across so many fine teachers that you have the pleasure of working with, and to see that they come, that you can still see them at your presentation. And Jacqueline, yeah, I know about your son. You have every reason to be very proud. So see, Jacqueline, I'm sure if we had her working as a student, working with her students, with her classmates, she'd have a lot to say about her son. And that's what we want. We want to personalize so people feel really great. They want to speak up. They want to speak up. You want people to speak up. Okay. So we have a general discussion here, general discussion questions. We're going to talk about our eating habits and health. How is your health? How do you stay in shape? When did you go to your last checkup? Remember, checkups have to be done on an annual basis. What are your eating habits like? What habits would you like to change? Okay, so this is a general discussion, and you've got some pictures, and this is based again on the platform, yeah. And then you have some examples of people here. And you want to ask, and this is on purpose, right? You want to ask about their health, all right? So here we have Yoshito. He's 24 years old. His weight is 140 kilos. He hates vegetables. He doesn't exercise. He has high cholesterol. So my question is, look at Jacqueline, so nice and generous again, Jacqueline, and one of my best teachers over there at Idiomas. And I see Marco Antonio Giron. Oh my goodness, but your daughter, yes, she paints beautifully. Fantastic, Marco. Good to see you. Okay, anyway. So what do you guys think? Is Yoshito healthy? Just give me a yes or no. Is he healthy? Now, you don't have to answer those questions because this is just to show you what the activity is like. What do you think? Is Yoshito healthy? Good, Yasmin. Good. That's what you need to do. Well, that's what you need to do. I don't do that, but that's the right idea. We need to all exercise. Okay, so what do you guys think? Yoshito, is he healthy? Yes or no? Lizzie says no. Carmen says no. Iskra says no. Okay, Orieta says no. So look, you have to analyze the situation. If you're a student, you have to analyze the situation. You want to do something similar. You want them to look at the information. It doesn't say he's unhealthy. It says, okay, he's 24. His weight is 140 kilos. That's high. So it doesn't say he's overweight, but you see the number, you have to infer that he's not at the right level, right? He doesn't exercise. He hates vegetables. So all of that information tells you he's not in good shape. Now, it doesn't say Yoshito is unhealthy, but you as a student, we want the students to think. We want them to analyze the information, to process the information, and to get it right, okay? And then we look at Paul. What do you think about Paul? What about Paul? He's got that smoke coming out. He's got that smoke. Okay. He doesn't like to do exercises. Okay. Good, Juana. That's the right idea. Good, good. Now Paul, he's smoking away. Okay. He's a heavy smoker. He's sedentary. No, so now so you have to tell me if the person is healthy or not. And then you have to recommend stuff. Okay. So again, you see, it's a two-part activity. It's a two-part task. We want the students to analyze the information, to come to a conclusion, and we want them to recommend. Okay. What would you recommend? Okay. So this is the critical thinking. And we've got Hannah. Okay. Hannah hates water. So do I. So she's not alone. I know water is a good thing to drink. I know, guys. I know you're going to tell me Socosani and Dasani and all of these waters that I'm not, Cielo, right? And we should be drinking San Luis. Over here in the U.S., we've got Nestle, and we've got the what do you call this? Evian and all this stuff. I don't drink water. My father's been trying to get me to drink water for a long time. I almost said the number of years, but no. Now, she doesn't drink water, but she's 105 kilos. She goes to the gym. She hates water. She controls her eating, though. Okay, she controls her eating. And then Lisa. As you can see, that's the idea. We want the students to analyze the information and to come to a conclusion about where or how well the student is doing. Okay. Now, PBL, Problem-Based Learning. Okay. And CTS, Critical Thinking Strategies. Okay, so we're going to work out some problems now. Okay. Yes, I do, Jacqueline. You know very well. You know I like coffee. Yeah, you remember. All right, Jacqueline. So listen. So this is a little different. This is a task, and it's a problem because my problem is I'm lost and I need help, and I need to get from one place to the other. Okay. So this is again from the platform. Now, if you're working with a textbook, then what that means is that you're probably going to get something similar in an e-form, right? In a digital form. Textbooks are coming in digital form as well. Okay. Well, let's see. He shouldn't smoke because he can get a disease. Amelia, that's right. Amelia, that's right. Amelia, that is correct. That's so he needs to stop smoking somehow. Okay. All right. So here we go. We look at the directions. Make a left on, make a right on, turn left, turn right, walk a number of blocks, or walk half a block. Then, right? So these are examples of how we give directions. Cross the street, right? Cross the street at some point. The coffee shop, the supermarket, the bank, the theater will be on your right, will be on your left, will be in front of, across the street, on the corner. This is the language we want to use. So guys, I want you to take a look for about 30 seconds because I'm going to need you to help me get to a certain place. Okay? So hold on a second. Okay. I'm back. Now that's a little better now. When you got some light, that's a little better. Okay. Very good. So you saw that. So we want to make a left, we want to make a right, we want to turn left, turn right. Now you're going to help me, okay? You're going to help me get to different places. All right? Okay, here we go. There we go. Let's see. All right. Does anybody recognize where this is? This is very similar to a place in Lima, Peru. Very similar. Okay. So does anybody know where this is? More or less. There's a district in Lima, Peru. This is a district. So does anybody know where this is? Take a look at it. Now this is Miraflores, Veronica. She's got her second last name is my last name. Look at that. Great, Veronica. All right. So Sylvia, Miraflores. Okay, great. All right. Now you guys got to help me get to different places. Okay. So I'm at point B. Okay. I'm at the visa office and I need to get to point F. No, let's make it easier first. Okay. Let's not make it too difficult for you guys. I need to get to G. I need to get to G. So again, I'm at B and I need to get to G. So remember the instructions that we saw before. Let me go back. Remember, walk 1 block, walk 2 blocks, walk 3 blocks, walk 4 blocks, turn left, turn right, make a right on, make a left on the name of the street. Yeah. The place will be on your left. The place will be on your right. Okay. Let's go back. So remember, I need to get from B to G. Okay? So tell me, what do I do first? Let me see one thing. Help me out here, guys. I need to get to the corner. So what do I do first? Okay. So I am on Berlin Street, but that's a good beginning, Ianita. Walk 2 blocks, Evelyn. Okay. Walk 2 blocks. Okay. I'm here. What do I do now? I'm here now. It's actually 3 blocks. That's okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now I'm here. What do I do now? Okay, Lovey, turn to the left. Okay, so I turn left. Okay, now I'm here. What do I do? Oh, look, I'm too, okay. Now I'm here. Now walk 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Eddie. Now I'm here. What do I do? I'm on the corner now. I'm on the corner. So I'm right here. I'm at the McDonald's. Get me out of here because I'm going to start eating hamburgers and I'm going to gain weight. Please get me out of here. I'm at McDonald's. What do I do? Good. Everybody's getting the right answers. I love it. All right. Turn right, Agustina. Okay, turn right. So Agustina says turn right. Now what do I do? Now I'm over here. Good, Rochi. Turn right. Regina, turn right. And now how many, what do I do now? I have to get to G, guys. I have to get to G. Cross the street, okay. Cross the avenue. Now I'm here at the tip of Kennedy Park. Good, Mahe. Good, Liliana. And walk 3 blocks. All righty, there we go. So we got walk here, and I get to G. This is what you want the students to do, okay? You want the students to, you want to give them different combinations. And it's a problem because it's a problem that has to be resolved because you're pretending that you're lost. The students are pretending. You let the students also do the same. You give the first example, and then you let the students work it out, okay? And so, good, Kateri. Go straight and pass Kennedy Park. Very good. You pass Kennedy Park and you walk 3 blocks. Excellent. So you want the students to figure out, and you give them different combinations, right? And then you make sure that they refer to the names, okay? Eddie Mar gave a very good, complete description right there. Julia Romero as well, very nice, okay? And Colibri Alegre also. Veronica, okay, point G is between, look at that, Veronica's, I think she's a little advanced. She said point G is between the hotel and the bank. Perfect, perfect, look at that. Veronica wants extra credit, that's why. She wants to get extra credit. Okay, very good. So that's one thing. Now, another problem is this. And so, again, we're looking at problem-based learning. We want students to think critically. The love is gone. This is a terrible activity, a sad activity. Okay, so what's the situation here? Your friend has just been told by his or her spouse or partner that the relationship is over. The spouse or the girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, told your friend that she or he doesn't love her or him anymore. Come up with 3 pieces of advice to give your friend. You will do a role play. One of you is the friend who has just been given the bad news. The other student or the students will give her or him some advice. And then you give the students some examples, right? Some prompts, right? Again, this is very important when you, and I put a lot of work into these activities because I want the students to speak in a natural way. I don't want the students to sound fake. Sometimes when we, don't get me wrong, textbooks are good, but sometimes when students rely too much on a textbook, the language is not natural. So when they travel, and they speak, right? They go to a restaurant or they go whatever, then they don't sound natural. People know that they studied, and they're students. You want them to sound more natural. So we give them pieces of ideas like, my world is crashing on me. Yeah, my world is crashing on me. What do you suggest I do? Well, if I were you, I would first. Yeah, if I were you, I would first. Yeah. Another thing you can do is you want to give the students some ideas so that if they're going to communicate, if they're going to express themselves, then they sound more natural, right? They sound more realistic when they communicate, when they speak, right? This is what you want, yeah. Colibri Alegre, because I guess that's why they call you Colibri Alegre. She says, go to a party. So what you want the students to do is you want them to work You want to send them into the breakout rooms, yeah, and you want them to practice, okay, and then you bring them back and they do the role play. You want to hear the advice first before they do the role play, okay? So this is actually, if you do this a certain way, this is also called 1 + 1 = 3. This is a cooperative learning technique. It's not only problem solving, it's also cooperative learning. It's called 1 + 1 = 3 because you have them work individually, especially in a physical classroom. You have them come up with 3 pieces of advice. You give them like a minute or 2 minutes, and then they come together and they compare, and then they come up with one list, and then they do the role play. So it's actually a cooperative learning technique. If you have more time, you can convert this into a cooperative learning technique or activity, and then do the role play, which is also critical thinking. And it's usually a blast. I mean, people love this activity. Yeah, I mean, they love it because, you know, it can happen to anybody. It could happen to one of your friends, right? What's it say, Evelyn? If I were you, I would meet new people and get blind dates. Look at that, Evelyn. She is ready. She's got that information. She's got that piece of advice ready to give out. She is ready to go. Okay. If I were you, I'd pass the page. Avi. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, you can't live in sorrow, right? You got, life goes on and you got to move on, right? Another thing you can do is go out with your friends and meet new people. Maje, good, very nice. Okay. All right. Test taking strategy. So we've seen a bunch of different types of activities. Let's look at test taking strategies. Students have to take tests, and you know that the tests have speaking sections. Okay, the tests have speaking sections. And so what do? 2 things about speaking sections. Number 1, you don't want to speak a minimum. You want the students to elaborate, but you just don't want people just blabbing away, because if they blab away, it's not focused on the task. Now, I've been an oral examiner for many different types of international examinations. And I know when people are trying to just speak their way out of a task, and they just say whatever comes to mind, and they think that by talking a lot, that's going to help them pass. If they say something that's not related to the task, we call it off task, okay? And usually you do very badly. You get a very low mark when you speak off task. So what you have to say has to be consistent with the task, because if it isn't, you're going to fail. You're going to fail the speaking test. So, in all of the work that we do, and then we do this at NYC. So we have the communicative practice activities, which, by the way, if you notice, all of these activities, they also indirectly help you go, yeah, Sissy, life goes on. Good. So if you notice, if you look at the activities and you analyze them very carefully, you're going to realize that all of these activities, in one way or another, help you for a variety of different international proficiency examinations. Okay? So anyway, so if we want to, this is based on one test. I'm not going to say the name, but you can figure it out. So usually what the instructor does, this is from the instructor, it said, do you think, and so what the instructor is going to do, the instructor is going to say, ask you questions about pictures. Now, a lot of the international exams, if not all of the international exams, have pictures. The pictures, you have to work with the pictures. And you need to teach your students how to do this, okay? So the idea is that you can prepare your students for an international exam while they are also practicing the language that they're learning in your course. So you can do both things, okay? And so here, these are the questions that you're going to ask your students, right? And then which of these places would you like to eat? Do you like best? And then once one student has spoken, you have them work in pairs. You ask the other student the same question. Okay. So this, for example, is from an international test, and this is available on the internet, by the way. So the first question is, do you like these different places to? And the Zoom is covering the last word. I think it's to eat. And so tip number 1, you want to train your students to analyze the pictures. Every time they see a picture, many times they want people to describe what's in the picture. So you want to train the students, number one, to quickly analyze the picture and identify everything in the picture. We have buildings and trees, a park bench, a picnic, plates, food, pizza, daughter, mother, father, grandmother, rocking chair, etc. Here, barbecue, rocks, friends, at the beach, seagulls. It must be a sunny day. You want them to be able to look at the pictures and tell the examiner as much as possible about each picture within the time frame, because remember, some of these tests only give each student a minute, but it depends on what the teacher is asking. If the student is not going to describe it, the student still has to identify what's in the picture, because what's in the picture will help the student respond. Yeah. So here, for example, we have a picnic. This is a barbecue. This is a restaurant. This is a family dinner, and this is a cafeteria. And so you have to quickly look at the picture, process it, and identify it so you can do the speaking task. Okay? So you want to give maximum info. Remember the 1 + 1 + 1 rule? The 1 + 1 + 1 rule helps you with an international exam. You want to give details. You want to compare and contrast. So comparing and contrasting, whether it's for a task that looks like this or it looks different, comparing and contrasting will help you with a great many international proficiency examinations. Okay? It'll help you. Okay? It'll help your students. Okay? So comparing and contrasting. And then personalizing, because they'll say, which one do you like best? Well, I like the picnic best because I always go with my family to the state park, and we like to take sandwiches, and so the more you can produce, the more you can. Two things you need to do: you need to be able to describe what you see, compare what you see here with another picture, depending on what the examiner is asking you, and then personalize it. Right? So compare, contrast, describe, compare, contrast, and personalize. And that will help your students with an international exam. This is what you have to. Yeah, me too. Nice meet. Yeah, me too. Home cooking is. I like to cook, so I like to cook at home. I think home cooking is better than eating out. But going to a picnic or doing a barbecue is nice as well. And when we went to school, we had to go to the cafeteria, so we didn't have much of a choice. Anyway, so you want to train your students over time from as early as possible. Good, Marisol Gomez. As early as possible, yeah? Because they will be trained over time. They will be trained over time, and they will be ready when the time comes for an international test, okay? When the time comes, they will be ready. It won't scare them. One of the biggest problems with international tests is that the students are not accustomed to the format. So when they're not accustomed to the format, they have a hard time answering in the time that's given to them. So we have to train them from the very beginning, as soon as possible, from even basic level. Start looking, what do you see in the picture? What do you see there? Give me as much detail as possible. So when the time comes, finally, for them to take a real international test, they won't be afraid. They'll be familiar with it, and they'll have a lot of things to say because they'll be used to it. Okay. Yes, Charles, we can use it in pair work. Excellent, good. Because for unless it's a computer-based test, most speaking tests, for example, Michigan and Cambridge, etc., will use pair work. They have to speak in pairs. Okay, so this is important for them. Okay. All right, so here, this is something else. This is similar to we're going to talk about at the end, a few minutes, about the GPE exams, GEP, excuse me, the Global English Proficiency Examinations. And this is similar to what you'll see there. So for example, the test is computer-based, so it's only individual. It's individual. And you look at, they'll show you a picture and they'll show you a question. And you have to think for 60 seconds as to what you're going to say. And then you'll have 75 seconds. The time will vary depending on the level. This is C1, yeah? So B2, C1. here's a way you can organize your ideas. So number one, and again, remember we talked about the templates, the speaking templates. So if you have, remember 1 + 1 + 1, if you use a speaking template, it gets easier for you to speak as a student, yeah? So here, for example, if we look at introductory statement, a description, reason, support 1, support 2, support 3, if you have time. So this is what we want to train the students. Okay, let's look at an example. Remember, introductory statement, reason, support 1, support 2, support 3. This is what we want to train the students, right? So look, it is believed that it is most difficult to raise our children once they become teenagers. If this is true, what can we do to make our relationships with our teenage children more solid so they can listen to us when they need to, while making decisions on their own when the time comes? So here you want, this is a general statement. This is a B2 level question. So if you look at it immediately, you have to make a general statement. We looked at the introductory statement, right? The description. So yes, it is very difficult to work with teenagers or to raise teenagers because they have, they're in a transition and they're trying to discover who they are. So that's your introductory statement. For example, they tend to have a hard time listening to parents because they think parents don't understand them. Okay, so I just gave you the introductory statement and then the reason, and now you give support. Yeah, so now you give support for the introductory statement and the reason. This is what you need to choose. This is what you need to train your students how to do with the mental template. Remember, there's a mental template that we're working with here. Okay, and this will help you with an exam like the GEP. Okay, this will help you with an exam like the GEP. You have to think fast. So it's almost like when we work with writing templates. This is a speaking template. It's a mental template. So once you train your students how to work with mental templates, it gets easier for them to speak. Remember, they don't have that much time to kind of get creative. You want them to get them focused. What am I going to say? I understand the question. I'm going to structure it this way. Boom. When the 60 seconds are up, I begin to speak and I can pass. Okay. All right. And yes, Evelyn, yeah, so yeah, we need to teach. I mean, this is a cumulative process. So Evelyn is right. We need to teach vocabulary and expressions, and we need to get students, train them over time. Remember, they begin with us at a very low level sometimes, and we need to work with them when they're kids. You know, these little bits, so they begin to extend and extend and extend the language. But we need to get them accustomed to working with the mental templates. Okay. Peruvianization. Okay, I think we're beginning to get to the final stretch. We're almost at the final stretch. We should be done in about 20 minutes. And so Peruvianization. Okay, Peruvianization is when we want to make it easier for the students to speak because the topic, the activity, is something from their own culture. Okay, now I've talked about this in other countries. And of course, when I'm in Chile, I say Chilenization. When I used to go, when I went to Chile before the pandemic, of course, I'm not going anywhere now, except virtual, but still, you know, it's the effect is greater when you're there at a conference. Mexicanization, Colombianization, Brazilianization. What was it? I forgot how I termed it. And so, depending on the country, in this case, in Peru, it's Peruvianization, because it makes it easier for people to associate the new language, the grammar, or the vocabulary with their own reality, right? With their own backgrounds, okay? So it's always a mix, okay? You want to combine course materials from a platform, LMS, or your digital textbook, and you want also to combine it with authentic material. So there are three components if you want to have a successful program. If you want to create activities that are really good, you want to have your core activities from your platform or from your textbook. You want to have Peruvianized activities, and you want to have authentic materials as well, so that you combine all of them. Yeah. So here, for example, who are they? I always use them because I love them both. Actually, I love one more than the other. I like her more, but I'm a little biased. I know. I'm not being objective. I'm being a little subjective. But yes, Gles, that's right. Yeah. So yeah, we love Peru. Okay. And so let's say, who are they? Now, the target grammar is as. We use this to compare, right? So we say subject plus to be, as plus adjective plus as. So if they are similar, you're going to use a positive form. If they are negative, if they're not similar, you're going to use a negative form, right? So for example, if we say good, the adjective is good. Okay, and we're talking about their singing. What is the sentence? So we say Lucia de la Cruz. And who's the other one? Who's the other singer? Good, Jocelyn. Look at that. Jocelyn is saying, Lucia is as good as Eva. So if you use the affirmative, then Lucia is equal to Eva. Now, Anelli gave another excellent example. Eva Young is as famous as Lucila. Everybody agrees, right? Lucia is as beautiful as Eva. Okay, Karina. So now, if you think they're different, then you use a negative. Okay. All right. So Lucia is as old as Eva. Okay. Now, if they're different, then you have to use a negative. Can somebody give me an example of the negative with Lucia and Eva Young? Okay, everybody's giving affirmatives. We don't want to give negatives, right? Okay, is as intelligent as Eva. Okay. All right. So let's go to the next one. How about these guys? Look at these guys, and I'll give you 30 seconds. Look at these guys and tell me, you could use the affirmative or the negative. Affirmative. Okay, so Consuelo gave us a negative. Lucia isn't as good as Eva. I don't agree, but that's okay. No, again, I'm a fan of Lucia de la Cruz, so that's why. Anyway, now give me an example with these guys, okay? I'll give you 30 seconds. Give me an example with these guys. Affirmative or negative with these gentlemen. Well, I'm getting a workout today. All right, very good. Okay. So let's see. All right, do we have examples? Let's take a look. There we go. Guerrero is as effective as Farfán. That would be Edward Cumpa. Very good. Paolo Guerrero is as handsome as Claudio Pizarro. Helen Sea. Okay, good example. Now, those are affirmative, okay? Give me some more affirmative, or you can give me negative. You can also give me negatives. Okay. Nobody else? Okay. All right. So I guess we're done with the soccer players. And then we have Lima. We have, Lima, Cusco, and Iquitos. I've been to Iquitos many, many times. It's a beautiful city. I recommend that you go up there if you can. Go to Iquitos. It's a fantastic city. Okay. Okay. So if I give you the adjective cold, you give me a negative or affirmative. For example, Iquitos and Cusco, and the adjective is cold. What is the sentence? If the adjective is cold, what is the sentence? Iquitos and Cusco. Let's see, guys. No? No examples? Any examples, guys? Iquitos and Cusco, cold. Okay, so I guess we would have to say Iquitos is not as cold as Cusco, right? Or if we use the other way around, Cusco is not as hot as Iquitos. So we want the student, we help the students. It's easier for the student because if I said New York and Toronto, we could say New York is not as cold as Toronto, but they've never been to New York, maybe, so most of them, and most of them don't know Toronto. I mean, they haven't been to Toronto. They're not familiar with Canada. They don't know that Canada is freezing most of the time, yeah? But they do know about their own country. And so it's easier for them to use the new grammar to speak and to describe. So you can say, give me a sentence. Cusco is not as cold as Iquitos. Cusco is not as hot as Iquitos. Okay, but Cusco is very cold because Cusco is very cold, especially in the winter. The temperature can drop to 0 degrees Celsius. So you want the students to give you more information, okay? Not just to give you the target grammar, you want them to elaborate. Again, 1 + 1 + 1. Give me a sentence with the grammar and give me 2 pieces of information. Okay, so we're in the final strategy, languaging by the book. And here, for example, we're looking at a recipe and look at the activity. Now, here the activity is read the salad recipe. Would you like to try it? Why or why not? Okay, so this is a discussion, right? So students have to read the information and they look at it. You know, you look at this. This is a recipe for Asian chicken salad, and they have to read it. And then you have a discussion. Would you like to try it, Luz? Would you like to try it, Karim? Would you like to try it, Madeleine? Would you like to try it, Rebecca? Would you like to try it, Edward? Would you like to try it, Helen? Would you like to try it, Marita? Would you like to try it, Ali? I want to hear from everybody, why or why not, after they've read it, right? So we're talking here. And so, but there's not much else there. If you notice, this is very different from the activities that I've been showing you, because the activities that I've been showing you have all had prompts to give the students ideas on how to respond, okay? And so they read this, then they have to discuss whether they would try it or not. And then they work in groups and they write a dish, a recipe for a dish that is easy to make, and share your recipes with the class. So they have to describe the recipe. They have to say, well, we made a recipe for ceviche, and so on. The problem is, this will not work well if you don't do something first. And that is, what is the language we need to tell students to focus on? And how do we expand on the language? This is a recipe, okay? Recipes have certain types of language. So for example, recipes have ingredients. Recipes have nouns. the ingredients, verbs, action verbs, sequence markers, first, then, next, quantifiers, a little bit, a dash of, a few, right? Some, a package, a carrot, whatever. And then how do we expand on the language? How can we use more examples of the language? If we don't work with the students, if we don't get the students to notice the target language, then they're going to have a hard time writing and then explaining by speaking the recipe. So this is a crucial step that's missing. And this is something we have to do sometimes, especially if it's something, a genre for speaking or writing that the students have not seen or done before. We have to go over the language first. There's something called prerequisite knowledge when we work with activities. And that means that we have to make sure that the students have the language they need to do the task. If they don't have the language, they won't speak. They can't speak because they don't know what to focus on. They don't know about ingredients. They don't know about quantifiers. They don't know about the steps, etc. Okay? Now, if we do something a little different, like over here, this is one of our activities. I've shown this before if you've been to my talks. And you will see that we have some ingredients for ceviche. We also have seco. We also have ají de gallina. And I think we have one more. Lomo saltado. Okay? And so we want the students to participate. And here we go with the video.
Can also participate in a little bit. What do we have to do first? Let's see.
Okay, let me tell you that I don't know how to cook very well ceviche, but I am going to try to do that. Okay, first you need to cut into pieces the fish.
Okay.
You have to squeeze. Then you have to squeeze the lemon. Some lemons, or the lime that as limes. Mr. Mercado told us that it is limes. So you have to squeeze limes in a bowl.
Okay.
And you add the fish, the pieces of fish.
Okay. All right, Katia. Let's have somebody else to help you too. Maybe since you say that you don't know how to do this very well, but it sounds good. You sound almost like a pro. But let's see if somebody else can help you too. Let's see. Who would like to help Katia? Nancy? Ada? Which one of you would like to help?
Yes, in my case, first,
Ada or Nancy?
Nancy.
Nancy. How would
In my
you
case,
help Katia? Yes.
In my case, first we have to wash the fish.
Okay.
And chop the fish into cubes.
Yeah.
Chop the fish into cubes.
Right.
And the next step is to place the piece in the container that you are going to use to serve the dish.
Okay.
And the following step is to mix the fish with the chopped yellow chili and coriander.
Okay.
Cilantro.
Coriander, yes.
Yes, and after that we should put the onion cuts into julienne strips.
Okay, in julienne, yes. Okay.
Strips.
Okay, very good. So what we see is the students are using the language that is provided to them. We help them. First of all, we use the recipes that are Peruvian, and so it's easier for them. They know, everybody knows what goes in a ceviche, a Peruvian ceviche, because I've been to other countries and I've tried their ceviches, a Peruvian ceviche, Peruvian lomo saltado, a Peruvian ají de gallina. So it makes it easier for the students to talk about the recipes, right? We saw the activity before. It was a recipe about a Thai salad. Now, don't get me wrong, Thai food is very good, but it was an Asian something salad, right? But it's easier for them, for the students, to talk about their own food and to relate the language, the quantifiers, the action verbs, the imperatives, right? Dice and chop and mix and stir and all that stuff. And the sequence markers, if they're talking about food that they know from their own experience of eating it all the time, or they might even know how to make it. And if they have somebody in their group who knows how to make it, then they're going to be better off. Yeah. Okay. So to start wrapping it up, to finish, what is a major challenge for ESL, EFL teachers? The number one challenge is, what do you think this is? It's 3 letters. 3 letters. 3 letters. And they represent a big problem for teachers who want to get students to speak. So it's letter number 1, letter number 2, letter number 3. It's an acronym. Yeah. Okay, so the big problem here is TTT, teaching talk time, or teacher talk time, excuse me, teacher talk time or teacher talking time. Because by our very nature, we tend to speak too much. I've observed at least hundreds, if not thousands of teachers. And I know from experience that we have a tendency to explain things and we do it because we care. We think we think we need to speak more to get the students to understand. And so that's the issue, right? We want the students to understand. So we take extra care. We want to explain things, and but that gets in the way of student speaking. So if we look at the research, for example, they've done different studies. Sometimes the TTT can be as high as 83%, 90%. And most of the time we speak when we are giving explanations, when we give praise. Now, praise is good as long as it's not too long. Feedback, instructions, questions, answering our own questions. Sometimes we answer our own questions. Sometimes we tell stories, so storytelling, anecdotes, and then piggybacking or cutting in, which means the student begins to speak and then the teacher or the instructor say, oh, yeah, that happened to me once too. And then the teacher begins to take over and start speaking as well. Okay, that's a big problem. So how do we handle that problem? So we saw a lot of techniques, right, to get students to speak, but we have to lower our own speaking. So we should self-assess. We should look at the moments in which we speak, how much we speak when those moments arise, turn taking, who's taking turns, the students, the teacher, when, what kinds of student responses are we getting? Are we getting complete statements? We should analyze them. We should record. We should record our classes, and we should listen, and we should transcribe what each person says. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it, because eventually if we are able to reduce our teacher talking time, our students will have more time to speak, and they will be better off, and they will feel better about their learning experience. And then you look at relevance versus the outcome. So if I am speaking, does that contribute to the lesson? Remember, good TTT, there's good TTT and bad TTT, like good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Good TTT leads to learning and leads to STT. Bad TTT leads to more TTT, okay? And student boredom, by the way, okay? So we want to make sure that if we have to speak, it contributes to learning or it contributes to more student talking time, okay? And these are some of the, if you take one of our Caprica courses, these are some of the professional development tools that will help you measure your TTT and improve over time, yeah? And you have some professional development plans, you have a checklist to watch your class, or you can watch a class for one of your peers, right? And it tells you the percentages, right? Where you are and so on. So when you apply all of these different techniques, you want students to summarize and ask each other questions. You want students to alternate turns to maximize participation and ensure time efficiency. Remember, have students use meta-language during brief reviews of the grammar or the vocabulary, mainly grammar, prior to communicative tasks. Have students come up with examples on the whiteboard and explain their work, and provide prompts to help students get their ideas out. We've seen a lot of prompts. Okay. So to finish, I'd like to remind you, when you're working and you're designing your activities, I'd like to, think about Scott Thornberry. Scott Thornberry is a famous writer, a famous methodologist, and he came up with a concept called the E factor. And the E factor consists of economy, which means we maximize the effectiveness of planning and the use of resources. Okay, so that the use of resources is utilized as best as possible. Okay, we make excellent use of resources. So the fewer resources and the better the outcome, the better the overall result. That the activities that we use and that we design are easy to implement and easy to understand, and that the efficacy, which is the most important part of the three components of the E factor, is that we get the results that we're looking for. And in our case, since we're talking about speaking, we want the students to speak a lot and to speak well, okay? And this is from How to Teach Grammar, the book How to Teach Grammar. Pearson Longman is the publisher, 1999. But if you think about it, the E factor really applies to all of the activities that we teach, all of the activities that we teach. So reading and listening, we can also get people to speak. Make sure you get language from everybody. Remember that when we're doing listening and reading, we want to make sure that everybody understands, everybody comprehends what they read and what they listened to, whether it was an audio or whether it was a live listening or whether it was a video that they watched. We need to hear from everybody to confirm that everybody understood. We also want everybody to personalize what they heard and what they read, and that will also give us a clear idea on how well they understood things. We want them to engage in critical thinking. We want them to work in time scenarios. Critical thinking, analyze, evaluate, create, synthesize, based on what you heard and what you read. Again, reading and listening are primarily meant for developing comprehension skills, but they are also great opportunities to get students to speak, and to speak a lot with a lot of rich content. Final points. Always use prep materials. If you're working online with video conferences, it's a good idea to create guides for your students that will let your students know what tasks and activities will be coming up at the next video conference session, giving them ideas on what they can do and what they can see, right? For example, here you see one of our student guides, prep material guides, based on the platform, and it includes the activities that they're going to work with during the video conference. It includes ideas on what they can say. It includes videos. This is very important. So not only do we give students ideas on expressions and phrases that they can use to speak better once they meet with their instructor, but we also give them videos. So for example, if we're going to do a role play on how to order food in a restaurant, we'll include videos of people actually ordering food in a restaurant so that the student can see, oh, that's how we say these things in real life. Yeah. And so it's more natural. So we give them ideas on what to say so they sound more natural, and we give them videos. And this is work, guys. I know this is a lot of work, but if you do the work, your students will do better. They will have better ideas on how to express themselves because they'll be able to see it before they go to the video conference. Okay? Conclusions. Elicit a lot. Ask your students to speak up. Ask everybody. Don't leave anybody out. And have a mental map of who's participated and who hasn't. Have a variety of activities so that everybody can do different kinds of things. Not the same thing all the time, but different kinds of activities and tasks. Provide them with scaffolding, with prompts, with other ideas on what they can do. Like I said before, the prep material in advance of your video conference sessions. Give them a lot of input, rich input that's been carefully chosen and that's appropriate for the level. Teach them strategies. Teach them a lot of strategies. Strategies are very important. And focus on the outcomes. The great thing about working by way of video conferences in virtual environments is that you can record your classes and then you can assess yourself. Okay? You can assess yourself and you can watch how well you did. How much speaking did you get from your students? When did they speak? How well did they speak? And then what you can do is you can develop a plan to help them recover if they didn't do so well. Okay? Okay, so we've gotten to the end, and then I think I will be able to speak. So I think we've gotten to the question and answer round. And then after the question and answer round, I can talk a little bit, very briefly, about some of the professional development opportunities that we offer by way of NYC Learning Solutions, which will be, and I'll go back to the questions. So it will be, oh, that's an invitation for people to join the NYC Learning Teachers community. But again, so what do we have to offer? So once we have answered some of the questions, we can talk about, very briefly, just a few minutes, what we have to offer in terms of courses, the LMS platform, exams that we have to offer, and so on. Okay, so I will look forward to the questions. There we go. Okay, I believe we have questions.
On behalf of English teachers in Peru community, dear Leonardo Mercado, thank you so much for this outstanding presentation.
Thank you.
Now it's time to share our exit ticket, please. Miss Miriam, are you there?
Yes, Miss, I'm here.
Okay, now please, you can share the exit ticket. Please, teachers, pay attention to these instructions. El día de hoy estamos compartiendo el link de registro de asistencia del exit ticket antes de la ronda de preguntas, porque nuestro excelente ponente, Leonardo Mercado, ha tenido la nobleza de poder compartir con la comunidad, de poder otorgar una beca completa y una media beca para algunos de los excelentes cursos que están a cargo de la institución que dirige. Así que todos los que van a llenar el registro de asistencia a través de este link van a tener 15 minutos, creo yo, o por más los 20 tal vez, hasta los 20 minutos ni un minuto más, creo yo, para poder tener toda la data y poder realizar el sorteo. Y que quede claro, estimados teachers, que el sorteo lo realizamos ahora mismo, lo realizamos en vivo, y si la persona que gane, el docente está ahí presente, entonces simplemente se le otorga la beca y nos comunicamos con ustedes, ¿sí? Miss Miriam, please continue.
Okay. Pay attention, please. And the exit ticket today is HTTPS:// CUT.LY/. Now, in capital letters, E, capital letters, T, lowercase I, capital letters, P, number 9, lowercase t, h. ¿Ok? Entonces no olviden que tenemos apenas 15 minutos porque se nos viene un gran sorteo gracias a nuestro speaker Leonardo Mercado, quien nos va a dar algunas becas, y es muy importante que ustedes tengan este exit ticket. Nuevamente vamos a dar, para que ustedes lo puedan copiar con calma, todo minúscula, H, T, T, P, S, dos puntos, slash, seguimos con minúsculas, C,
U T T punto L Y slash mayúscula E mayúscula T minúscula I mayúscula P número 9 minúsculas T H. Mucha suerte, de esto depende para que ustedes sean los próximos ganadores de estas becas que nos está ofreciendo Mr. Leonardo Mercado. Thank you, Miss Mariela.
Thank you so much, dear Miriam Córdoba. Ya está fijado por si acaso el link también en los comentarios de Facebook. Lo pueden ver ahí. And we already have a few questions. And please, Angela and Kevin, can you read the questions for Mr. Mercado, please?
Hey there. Sorry.
Hello, Angela. Hi.
How are you? Thank you so
Good,
much
fine.
for today's webinar. It was really, really interesting and amazing.
Thank you.
Once
Thank
again.
you so much. It's a great pleasure. Thank you. My honor.
I have a question here. Well, teachers were asking because they actually have like a couple of hours for making these activities of speaking. So what would you recommend that can be done in these cases? Because considering that they also send these activities through WhatsApp or other apps.
Yes, that's an excellent question. And I think we go back to Scott Thornberry and this idea that the E factor, that we use our time efficiently. And sometimes we don't have enough. Actually, we teachers never have enough time. We never have as much time as we would like to have. And so this is when planning is so crucial. And when we plan, how much time do I have? What must I absolutely cover next week? I have 2 hours. So I have to make the best use of that time, or as best I can, so that my students take full advantage of that opportunity. So it really depends on what is expected, because every institution and also the public school system itself has certain expectations in terms of what you are required to cover in the 2 hours per week. But if you have the opportunity to get the students to practice their speaking skills, then the idea is to choose the activity or design the activity. For example, all of the activities that we saw today were homemade. They didn't come from a book. So how can you design an activity that will make the best use of that reduced time slot that you have each week, that will get your students to feel good, to speak as much as they can, maximize participation, and take away this idea that they have that they are able to use English to speak effectively. So you have to really, the planning is crucial here. How can I slip in those opportunities for speaking? Because in the end, I know it's not that easy, because we work in organizations and we work in institutions that have expectations that require us to do certain things. But I would rather have students speak and put their language skills into practice than have a traditional grammar lesson that's going to last an hour, right? That's a whole other topic. That's another presentation. How can we teach grammar without doing it traditionally and taking so much time? That's a whole other topic. But again, how can you make the best use of those 2 hours each week? That's when you're planning, the planning stage, the lesson planning stage comes in, and it's so crucial. So I would say, find an activity that doesn't take, or find several activities that don't take that much time. For example, many of the ones that we saw today, with the exception of maybe the map. And again, it also depends on how well trained they are, because the more trained they are, the less time they will take during the actual session. The more you give them in advance to prepare for the video conference session, the less you have to cover and explain while you're with them in the session itself. So again, it's planning, it's the material that you get the students to use to prepare, it's how much training that you give. It's a delicate balance, especially when you have such little time per week, but it can be done. And if your students are able to use their language skills and feel good about what they're saying, and you give everybody an opportunity, then I think you're very well on your way to success.
Thank you so much. Now it's Kevin's turn.
All right,
Thank you
so
for
much.
the question.
Hi,
Evan.
Mr. Mercado. Thank you so much for presentation. Yeah, actually, I also agree with what you said, and also for interesting question by Angela. Now I have another question that is related to that. It's so amazing all the activities that you already show us, and so cool because everyone could participate. But what advice could you give us as English teachers also to provide confidence in our students? Because most of the time we have like amazing ideas, but at the moment when we want to apply all these kind of activities, most of them they don't want to talk, they are so shy. So it will be so interesting to hear from you some advice to face that situation.
Yes, I think nothing motivates people more, regardless of the age, including young children, than success. They have to overcome their fear of, particularly students don't like to participate until they learn how to succeed with us. But at first they don't like to participate because they're afraid of making mistakes and looking ridiculous. And so, from experience, I've worked over the years, and I've seen situations where if you have the right activity that is challenging enough, that is engaging enough, that is relevant to their interests, just like some of the ones that we saw Peruvianized or personalized or what have you, they'll want to speak. So first you want to make sure that the activity is designed in a way that will get them to want to speak, right? Because if they see something that's cold and unfamiliar and sterile, then they're not going to be that willing to do it. That's number one. Number two, how you speak to your students, how you give them feedback, positive reinforcement is very important. It doesn't matter whether it's in a physical classroom or in a virtual classroom. It's very important that you let your students know when they say something, they say it well. They should also be talked to. Again, this is something that we have to do consistently. They have to understand that making mistakes is part of the learning process. Nobody does anything in life perfectly the first time. Whether you're riding a bike, whether you're swimming, whether you're starting a relationship, whether you're beginning college, whatever it is, everything takes time to learn and to master. And so making mistakes is fine. And again, and this is on the part of the teacher as well, because a lot has to do with how we address our students. We teachers have to also be aware of the fact, and I know because I've done a million trainings, and sometimes we have excessive expectations, and that is reflected on how we talk to our students and the kind of feedback we give them. Sometimes we expect perfection. For example, when I give trainings on corrective feedback, a lot of people say, well, I play audios and I show videos, and then they'll say, well, he made a mistake here and he made a mistake there and he made a mistake there. Yeah, but you're not supposed to point out those mistakes because you're focusing on fluency, or that's not the target language for the lesson. The target language for the lesson is the past tense, but you're correcting everything. You're correcting present tense, you're correcting the adjectives, you're correcting everything. So we teachers have to learn how to find that delicate balance between comprehensibility, which is the main goal of fluency. So as long as the student can talk, we're having a class discussion, we're not going to be correcting students. That's what causes students to be afraid to speak. So we correct them at certain times, specifically when we're teaching grammar, when we're teaching vocabulary, and when we're teaching pronunciation. If we're focusing on fluency, we don't correct anything. We let them speak. And if they're having trouble speaking, we help them speak. We do the scaffolding, we give them the prompts, and we give them a little help. So it's a combination of things. How you plan your lesson, right? Talking to your students, convincing them that making mistakes is beautiful. It's fine. Tell them it's beautiful, okay? Because it's part of the process. It's a phenomenon. One day they will speak the way they want to speak, but it takes time to get there. And while they're getting there, the mistakes will be disappearing little by little. And third, you want them to succeed, because there's nothing that motivates students more than success. If your activities are well designed and your activities give everybody an equal opportunity, and your activities involve everybody and everybody speaks, and you give them positive feedback, you did great, Angela. Good, you did great, Miriam. You did great, Esteban. You did fantastic. And you give them real feedback. Don't just do it just to say anything, because students also, they're very smart. They know when you're just saying anything just to say it. They can tell when you're sincere and when you're just saying things just to get out of the way. Then the students say, hey, that wasn't so bad. I did do good today. Maybe I'll try again next time. And then they'll try again next time. Hey, I did great again. Okay. Hey, this wasn't so bad. And little by little, they begin to lose the fear. And it doesn't matter what the age is, because it happens to little kids, just like it happens to people who are 50 and 60 years old. Everybody's afraid of looking ridiculous. I've spoken to people say, I don't want to look ridiculous. Listen, and then you talk to them. And then little by little, when everybody gets to know each other and they're doing great, they see that the activities are interesting, that they're doing well, the fear begins to dissipate and disappear. I guess that would be my answer.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Yeah, that was perfect. Do you have another question, Angela?
I actually have one more. Well, I have seen many of my colleagues in many years complaining about the thing that happens when you teach and you like adopt the bad pronunciation from our students. That it's not wrong, but it happens many times when you are teaching lower levels, and it's something that it's worrying many teachers. I mean, it has happened many times that teachers ask how or what can they do to change this, or how to train themselves to change these things that happen.
Okay, so here we go. A couple of things here, and I'll speak from a personal experience. In my particular case, it goes both ways. Number one, there is something called linguistic regression. And this means that, if you're learning a second language, you can learn to master it. You can reach a very high level of proficiency, but you have to cultivate and maintain the level of language that you work so hard to achieve. Because if you don't, over time, it begins to deteriorate. So it's a regression. So for example, I've encountered many, many teachers, public and private sector. They finished at a famous institute, and then they got the ECPE, and they got whatever, all these other certificates. And then you talk to them and their language proficiency doesn't match the certificate. They've lost the level over time. Why does that happen? That happens mainly for 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, they don't speak English as much as they should. They only speak English when they're in the classroom. And in many cases, unfortunately, like you said, Angela, they're given very basic courses. So if that's the only English that you're speaking, over time, you're not speaking at the level that you had accomplished. And so you begin to deteriorate. Your level begins to deteriorate. You lose it. Now, you don't lose it completely. It's here. It's still here, but it's inactive. And it has to be activated again. It takes work to activate it again. You don't lose it completely. It's not gone. It's just here somewhere, stored away. So that's number one. Number two, it's a teacher's attitude also, because I know this. Teachers like to speak to each other in Spanish. I know I ran 2 language centers, right? I worked at IPNA for almost 20 years, and I worked at Idiomas. And I always used to tell teachers, hey, don't talk to each other in Spanish. You want to talk to each other in Spanish, you speak outside at home. You go to your house. When you're at work, you need to speak in English. And I used to tell people, hey, you got to imagine this is the American or the British embassy. You can't speak Spanish here. This is foreign soil. And this is for your own good, because if you keep on speaking Spanish, then without realizing it, people don't realize it. They lose the English. I remember when I first started teaching many years ago, there was a little old lady. She was like, she was like this tall. She was like a meter tall. She was very small, very cute, very nice lady. And she never realized she was speaking in Spanish half the time in the classroom and in the hallways with other teachers. And I thought that was an interesting phenomenon, because she was a senior teacher. And I said, why does she speak in Spanish half the time? It's like mixed. She wasn't even aware of it. It's because she let that happen, like other people let that happen. So I would go, I always had a habit of going to the teacher's room to say hello to everybody in the morning and in the afternoon. I always went to say hello to each teacher. And sometimes I caught them speaking in Spanish. So if you are at work, or if you're interacting with people online, with fellow professionals, fellow colleagues, only use English. Now, some of them your friends might say, hey, what's the matter with you? Why are you talking in English? What's the matter? You're acting strange. No, it's because we have to. We're English language teaching professionals. We must use English as much as possible when we're within a working environment or when we're involved with our teaching. That's number one. So how can they recover it? That's the question. Another thing they need to do is to be exposed to massive amounts of input. Now, Stephen Krashen talks about this a lot. Massive amounts of input, constantly, not just stopping when you got your ECPE. It doesn't end when you got your ECPE or your CPE. You have to continuously cultivate the language until the day we fly off, we take the elevator. We have to continue cultivating English. We have to have goals. So it's very important for teachers to say, listen, I really want to I want to reach this level. I want to get this certificate. Okay, you got the certificate. Now what do you want to do? I want to take a course in English. I want to take a college course in English. I want to take a whatever. And constantly have new goals to improve your language. One goal that people might want to consider is to improve their vocabulary level. Now, vocabulary level is measured by number of words that you know, that you have learned. More specifically, word families. So, for example, if you learn the 2,818 most frequent words in the English language, the research shows that you are in a good position to understand approximately 90% of all English texts, including academic texts, and in a good position to engage in conversational situations 95% of the time. But that's not enough. The research shows that you need to know at least 8,000 to 9,000 word families. So a good goal for anybody to not lose the level is to continue learning new words. And there are a variety, and that's for another presentation, a variety of different techniques that can help people learn as many as 200 words in an hour. New words. You use word cards, and you can learn 200 words in an hour if you are well trained. So to sum it up, you have to not stop when you got your certificate. That's the problem with people. And it also happens when you're learning. When people get a PhD or people get a master's and then they forget about learning. I'm still learning. I'm learning new things. I'll continue learning for another 30 years, 40 years. Actually, that's a little short. Hopefully another 50 years, I'll be learning things because I embrace learning as a lifelong process. And the same thing happens with language. People need to embrace language. Final comment. My son, he was born in Peru. He had dual citizenship because of me. And so I never taught him English. I never had the time to teach him. I'll be honest with you. I spoke to him occasionally, but I never had the time to teach him. But he was very motivated. So he exposed himself to massive amounts of language. So when he was 14 or 15, he was listening to court cases in English. He was listening to political debates in English. He was into American politics. He would listen to all kinds of speeches. And I would listen and say, what is he listening to? What are you doing? I said, I don't even listen to that stuff. What? And so he was very motivated. And he got to a level where his English, when we began to speak more frequently, then he got older and I could see, wow, he got all this English. It reached a native level. Now he's studying in the US. He's in the second year. He's about to finish the second year. And he has a 4.11 GPA, which is the average, right? Which 4.0 is the maximum. He has a 4.11. And he's on the presidential list. Michael Mccarthy, he's a famous linguist. He's a corpus linguist from the University of Nottingham. He established in one of his books, he established that in order to succeed in a US or UK university from the very first year, it is ideal if you know at least 16,000 words. So remember I talked about 2,818 and then another 8 or 9,000. Ideally, if you're going to study in a university setting, you want to know at least 16,000 words. My advice to all the teachers out there, you want to improve your English, get into YouTube, get into those websites, stream, watch what you want, what you enjoy, but expose yourself to as much English as you can. Find what you like, find what you enjoy, and that will be assimilated into your interlanguage, which is the term that my friend Dr. Larry Selinker, he created the term interlanguage back in 1972. That will enrich your interlanguage, and you will never go back. You will not suffer from regression. That's what you must do, but you have to be motivated. You're not just going to sit there and your language is going to stay. You have to push yourself to have new goals all the time and expose yourself to massive amounts of input in the language if you really want to improve and maintain it. So that's a very good question, because I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you very much for everything, indeed. And I think all the teachers are also really thankful for all what you did for us today and all what you provide us. So now I invite you to stay with us, because now here is Mariela too. So you can present what you have for us today. Marie, are you there?
Yes, I guess so. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, yes. Time's up for the exit ticket, teachers. Ya pasó el tiempo. Si pasamos al siguiente slide, querida Angelita. Vamos primero a agradecer a toda la audiencia que ha estado presente el día de hoy, más de 600 teachers que han estado conectados, muy atentos, disfrutando y participando muy activamente del webinar presentado por Mr. Mercado, que ha sido realmente excelente. El speaking es un skill que para todos nosotros no es muy fácil de trabajar, es más, siéndote sincera, Leonardo, te comento que al menos en las instituciones públicas el año pasado el Ministerio de Educación para esta educación a distancia ha estado trabajando con la estrategia Aprendo en Casa, pero se ha enfocado solo en dos competencias que vienen a ser los 3 skills en inglés, que es reading, writing y algo de listening, pero no se ha podido trabajar el speaking. Justamente por algunas debilidades que hay con el tema de las brechas y las diferencias y la diversidad que hay más que en los docentes, en los estudiantes y en el acceso que tienen al servicio de Internet, ¿no? Por eso de repente habían varias preguntas relacionadas por ahí en el chat, y realmente todos los tips que el día de hoy nos has dado van a ser muy productivos para todos nosotros. Muchísimas gracias por aceptar la invitación. Y ahora mismo que estamos viendo en pantalla algunos de los cursos que a través de tu institución se están dando para este año 2021, para que todos los teachers que siempre están queriendo prepararse tengan la oportunidad de poder hacerlo con una institución de calidad dirigida por una persona con tu trayectoria, estimado Leonardo. De repente nos puedes explicar un poquito, por favor, de qué trata el Global Teaching Certificate, que me parece que son los cursos para los que hoy día tenemos las becas, ¿verdad?
Exactamente. Bueno, ahora me toca expresarme en castellano, que es en teoría mi segundo idioma, pero sí, gracias por la oportunidad, y efectivamente nosotros promocionamos los Global Teaching Certificates courses de Cooperative Education con sede en la ciudad de Atlanta, Georgia, en los Estados Unidos. Y son cursos que proveen una experiencia de aprendizaje para el desarrollo profesional de docentes de inglés, en idiomas en general, en temas fundamentales para lo que es el éxito de un profesor o un docente, ¿no? Tenemos el curso Global Teaching Certificate 1, que es Speaking and Listening, que justo trata muchos de los puntos que acabo de mencionar también. Y lo interesante de estos cursos es que enfocan la parte conceptual, el desarrollo conceptual del por qué deberíamos proceder de cierta forma, tomar ciertas decisiones en el aula, como también el cómo y qué es lo que deberíamos hacer. Entonces hay una parte de un marco teórico, conceptual, que sustenta todas las estrategias y las técnicas y las prácticas que podemos aplicar en el aula con respecto a cada uno de los temas. Entonces vemos, por ejemplo, Speaking and Listening, que es los dos van mano a mano, de la mano. Tenemos Language Assessment, que es la evaluación de las competencias y las habilidades de los alumnos en lo que respecta a las diferentes lo que destrezas, ¿no? Lo que es listening and reading and speaking and writing, las 4 principales, como también hay una parte que se hace referencia a exámenes internacionales, cómo se puede preparar y evaluar a los alumnos de acuerdo a estándares internacionales. El tercer curso es Language Forms, que es cómo enseñar la gramática, el vocabulario y la pronunciación, ¿no? Pero no de manera tradicional, sino de una forma que obviamente conlleve el éxito para la comunicación en el inglés, porque para eso sirve. Porque la gramática en sí, aprender la gramática sin tener un fin comunicativo, es una gramática que no tiene nada de utilidad. Entonces, estos cursos son muy modernos en el sentido de que la interfaz es visualmente atractivo, interactivo. Hay videos de clases reales, hemos visto uno hoy día, de clases reales que demuestran cómo se pone en práctica las diferentes técnicas y estrategias. Hay entrevistas con profesores de diferentes partes del mundo y también hay una serie de herramientas para que el profesor pueda autoevaluarse y también emprender un camino de desarrollo hacia su desarrollo profesional de acuerdo a las diferentes áreas de su competencia que desea reforzar, ¿no? Ese es los 3 cursos. Tenemos un curso también para coordinadores o aquellos que aspiran a ser coordinadores en el futuro, o los que están ejerciendo en la actualidad o los que desean tomar ese siguiente paso en un determinado momento y aspirar a tener un ascenso, un puesto de mayor responsabilidad. Todos los cursos conllevan un certificado. En el caso de los cursos para docentes, cada curso conlleva un certificado de 60 horas. Si se llevan los 3 cursos, hay un curso que se llama Global Teacher de 180 horas por los 3 cursos que en la actualidad existen. Hay 2 cursos que están en desarrollo que van a seguir. ¿Perdón?
Se suman las horas, Leonardo. Es
Se
decir,
suman las horas.
además de, digamos, si llevo cada curso, tengo por cada curso 60 horas y si llevo los 3 cursos, hay un certificado adicional de 180 horas.
180 horas. Y en el caso del curso para coordinadores es un curso de 300 horas. Entonces es un curso muy extenso que cubre lo que es liderazgo, lo que es gerencia de proyectos o manejo de proyectos, lo que es el tema de calidad y lo que es también el tema de cómo manejar la parte administrativa, que es a veces para algunos es bastante difícil. Me han tocado personas que han sido parte de mis equipos que al principio tuvieron que sufrir mucho por el tema administrativo. Manejaban la parte académica, pero no la parte administrativa, ¿no? Entonces, ese es por un lado. También tenemos una plataforma, como aparece acá también, una plataforma de inglés que cubre todas las destrezas, tiene videos donde se ven cómo se aplica el idioma, la gramática, el vocabulario, hay modelos de pronunciación, reconocimiento de voz, las lecciones de gramática para aclarar las cosas, un poquito los conceptos en video, que uno puede ver la persona aclarando los puntos con ejemplos. Hay chat con alumnos internacionales de diferentes partes del mundo y hay eventos y clases especiales para diferentes niveles que se programan de manera permanente, ¿no? Entonces es una plataforma muy moderna que cubre hasta, en realidad hasta el nivel C1. Entonces es una plataforma que va desde el pre-A1 elemental básico hasta un nivel B2 plus C1. Entonces cubre toda la gama principal de los niveles del marco común europeo y es una plataforma muy moderna. Sí.
Y cada nivel, Leonardo, al terminar cada nivel en la plataforma, ¿hay alguna certificación?
Sí, efectivamente, hay un certificado que constata el nivel alcanzado por cada nivel de acuerdo al marco común europeo. Entonces hay un certificado que se le entrega al docente, ¿no?
Excelente, excelente. Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo, por esta información. Ahí tienen también la información de los precios. Yo puedo decir y dar fe, hay varios teachers en la comunidad que han llevado algunos cursos ya con la institución que diriges y realmente han quedado admirados y han quedado agradecidos por la calidad del contenido. Podemos por eso al menos recomendarlo, quienes hemos tenido el gusto de poder llevar algunos de estos cursos, la calidad que hay en la plataforma y en los cursos de metodología del inglés que son muy, muy buenos.
Lo que sí quisiera mencionar que están relacionados a estos cursos, antes de terminar, tenemos un programa que se llama el programa 5 estrellas, que ya tenemos también docentes, excelentes docentes de la comunidad también que han participado, que incluye un examen internacional.
Lo puedes mostrar, Angelita, perdona que te corte, Leonardo, sino que tenemos ahí el banner para que también...
Ya, fantástico. Ya.
Ajá,
Perfecto.
ahora sí.
Excelente. Sí, esto justo está basado también en lo que es la plataforma, que es la columna vertebral del proceso de aprendizaje para la parte autónoma, pero también hay sesiones de videoconferencia para que los docentes puedan aplicar lo que han aprendido, justo los temas que he mencionado ahora en la presentación. Muchas de las actividades están basadas en los mismos fundamentos, y la idea es que esto sea un programa de un año donde el docente pueda desarrollar sus competencias en el idioma inglés, donde pueda también aplicarlo con digamos, colegas a través de videoconferencia con un instructor altamente capacitado, certificado y avalado por nosotros, y que apunte a lograr una certificación internacional al finalizar los 12 meses. Una certificación que en algunos momentos vamos a explicar en mayor detalle, que digamos avala el nivel alcanzado de acuerdo al marco común europeo. Es un certificado emitido en Inglaterra, y es con una evaluación computarizada por computadora, donde inclusive existe la posibilidad de que yo no quiera, ¿no? Pero si se mantiene en este tema de la cuarentena y lo demás, se puede inclusive tomar en casa. Entonces, esa es una facilidad que otros exámenes más tradicionales no ofrecen, y cubre todas las destrezas. Inclusive hice mención a algunas de las actividades que justo está orientado hacia el tipo de speaking, ¿no? Que se vería en el examen, entre otras cosas. Y por supuesto el premio, la corona para el esfuerzo que pueden hacer los docentes. Si logran la meta, y obviamente esa es la idea, que hagamos todo lo posible para que lleguen bien preparados para su examen internacional, ellos también serán beneficiados con un curso de Cooperative Education, justamente como un premio al esfuerzo realizado sin costo adicional. Eso está incluido ya dentro del paquete al precio que ven, que es el 389 soles por 3 meses, ¿no? Entonces incluye plataforma, incluye sesiones de prácticas comunicativas, incluye el examen internacional, incluye recursos para poder prepararse para el examen, webinars también. Yo ya he estado dando ya webinars para empezar a orientar al grupo ahora que está próximo a terminar, y el examen, y el curso internacional. Y en cuanto a metodología, también tenemos un curso que por convenio con la Universidad de la Ciudad de Nueva York, the City University of New York, CUNY, que es un curso de 6 semanas, 24 horas académicas, con una posibilidad de extenderla a 40 horas. Empieza el primer grupo el 20 de marzo, que es sábado, y otro grupo el 22. Ya tenemos interesados para ambos grupos. Y es un curso que cubre diferentes temas, desde lo que es la experiencia virtual, ¿no? La transición de lo que es la enseñanza en el aula física a lo que es el entorno virtual, todo lo que se necesita saber para tener mayor éxito, algunos de los temas que hemos hablado hoy día, pero en general cómo se puede uno adaptar con éxito al entorno virtual y hacer el mejor uso del tiempo que tenemos a nuestra disposición, así como la tecnología, como también todo lo que es la planificación, los objetivos de aprendizaje, los estándares internacionales, cómo medir el éxito de nuestras clases en lo que respecta al listening, al reading, lo demás, gramática, speaking. En el curso vamos a analizar clases grabadas para determinar cuáles son los pasos que deberíamos promover y analizarlos de manera crítica para poder determinar cuáles son los factores principales para el éxito. Vamos a ver el tema de evaluación de las competencias, como también lo que es cómo uno puede emprender un proceso de desarrollo profesional a través de diferentes alternativas que existen, ¿no? Entonces, es un curso muy completo y con el examen final que se toma en base a lo que se ve durante el curso, eso determina la obtención de un certificado de la City University de New York, como también el logo de nosotros, que es de NYC, ¿no? Entonces, este curso es muy completo y hemos tenido muy buenas reviews de parte de los que lo han tomado, y bueno, es algo que estamos ofreciendo con estos nuevos grupos que empiezan el 20 y el 22 de marzo.
Excelente, Leonardo. Están preguntando muchísimo, la verdad, por los cursos, por los comentarios. Informarles a todos que la información se les va a hacer llegar también mediante el correo electrónico que se les va a enviar a todos los que han registrado su audiencia el día de hoy y mediante el Exit Ticket. Agradecerte, Leonardo, el poder otorgar estas becas para nuestra comunidad y también el tener siempre esa preferencia especial con la comunidad con respecto a los programas que abres y a los precios exclusivos para nuestros miembros, considerando, por ejemplo, a mí me llama la atención ese programa 5 estrellas, ¿no? En el que está incluido que además te da la facilidad de que tal vez también se pueda hacer el examen de manera virtual, te certifica todos los skills, me parece espectacular, me parece una muy buena propuesta y todo lo que va desde tu institución sabemos que brinda calidad. Mil gracias, Leonardo, por ello. Vamos a pasar ahora sí al sorteo, ya están esperando los teachers.
A ver.
Precisamente. Pasamos al sorteo. José, teacher Ortega, de repente puede compartir ya, por favor, el programa. Para esto, recordemos a todos de que hemos recogido toda la data de la información de quienes han podido llenar el Exit Ticket y en la columna donde dice concursantes es que ustedes van a poder verificar que toda esa data va a ir aleatoriamente moviéndose y bueno, a la primera quien salga, ahí va a agregar los concursantes, ahí están la lista que va hasta abajo, creo que son más o menos 587, como está mostrando ahí, 587 registros que han podido llenar el Exit Ticket, que van a entrar en este momento al sorteo de la primera beca. Leonardo, para los cursos de metodología de la enseñanza de inglés, ¿verdad? Speaking, listening, o language assessment, o language form, ¿ya?
Así es, correcto.
Ya. Listo, entonces vamos con la primera, Leonardo, y por favor, en cuanto salga el nombre del ganador, tú lo mencionas.
Ok, perfecto, vamos a ver.
Go, teacher José.
Patricia Elvira Salazar Gómez, de Lima.
Elvira Salazar Gómez de Lima. Querida Patricia, si estás ahí en este momento, a ver si los demás administradores, Miss Zuli, Miss Miriam, Miss Ángela me ayudan. Kevin tiene que escribir, por favor, en los comentarios de Facebook, si está presente, solamente le damos 40 segundos y si no, pasamos al siguiente. Esto es para la beca completa. Veamos si está Patricia Elvira Salazar Gómez. Parece que no, o sí. ¿Está sí. Patricia?
Sí está.
Sí, ya dijo presente, sí.
Ya está.
Ya está, fantástico.
Entonces,
felicitaciones.
Muy bien, felicitaciones, querida Patricia, por favor, comunícate, creo que ya hemos conversado alguna vez a través del Messenger, please, para poder coordinar el tema de la beca y que puedas coordinar también con Mr. Mercado para que se pueda activar la cuenta. Bien, pasamos entonces a la siguiente media beca, ¿verdad, Leonardo? Muchísimas gracias. Pasamos para la media beca y veamos. Go, vamos, teacher Ortega.
Yeah. María Isabelca Lengua Sotelo.
Es de Ica.
Perdón. María Isabel de Ica. María Isabel Lengua Sotelo de Ica.
Ajá, María Isabel Lengua Sotelo de Ica, Leonardo. A ver, está con suerte, está por ahí. María Isabel Lengua Sotelo de Ica. Si está ahí, por favor, debe de escribir en el chat, en los comentarios de Facebook, para poder confirmar la media beca. Aún no la vemos. Vamos a ver unos segundos más. Esperamos. Si es que está presente. Y esta media beca justamente cubre también el curso los cursos de metodología de Caprica que había mencionado Mr. Mercado, ¿verdad? Los 3 cursos que justamente te comento, Leonardo, mientras esperamos que confirme por ahí Isabel, justamente están relacionados también con lo que va dentro de los mismos exámenes de nombramiento, ascenso, contrato que toma el Ministerio de Educación, ¿no? Porque en realidad lo que ahí se evalúa es el manejo de la metodología de la enseñanza del inglés que tiene el docente y justamente esto en la práctica, ¿no? A mí me parecía interesante lo que mencionaba sobre los videos que habían como los que mostraste, de cómo se aplica, ¿no? Eso es algo diferente para mí, nuevo, me parece
Sí,
muy
es
bueno.
una formación completa, justo lo que es la parte conceptual, como también los cursos están alineados con los estándares internacionales de agencias de acreditación internacional, como ICOS y CEA, porque justamente también exigen mucho a los profesores y cuando van a acreditar una institución, lo primero que evalúan es el desempeño metodológico y lo que son los resultados o los learning outcomes, que es el término que siempre empleo. Entonces, están alineados tanto como para poder cumplir con lo que pueda exigir el Ministerio de Educación, como también el tema de instituciones, o perdón, entidades internacionales de acreditación.
Eso es. Bien, creo que pasamos al siguiente. No hemos tenido la respuesta. Teacher Ortega no está, no ha confirmado, así que pasamos al siguiente para la media beca, por favor. Ah, ya está, ya. El sonido de pena. Vamos.
Es, Luz Alanoca Valdivia de Arequipa.
Así es, Luz Alanoca Valdivia de la ciudad de Arequipa, Characata. La colega Characata, a ver, estará ahí, espero que sí. Si no está ahí, mi querida Luz, pasamos al siguiente. Vamos a esperar unos segundos más. Vamos a esperar la certificación. Mientras tanto, vamos conversando porque yo veo acá algunas preguntas, ¿no? Están preguntando sobre costos de los cursos de metodología, estoy leyendo ahí. Y también la certificación. Entiendo que tu institución está ubicada en Estados Unidos, Leonardo, ¿verdad? Por lo tanto, es una certificación internacional.
Sí, bueno, en el caso digamos, NYC, nosotros damos las certificaciones con el respaldo de entidades de Estados Unidos. Nosotros tenemos alianzas estratégicas justo con socios muy importantes internacionales en Canadá, en Estados Unidos, Inglaterra. Así que nuestra organización definitivamente es una organización internacional en su alcance.
Excelente, entonces, ¿qué más que ello? Pienso que es una excelente oportunidad para todos nosotros, al menos el poderlo realizar de manera virtual y poder tener una certificación de esa calidad para muchos de nosotros que, como en mi caso o el de muchos, seguramente nos encontramos en zonas en las que normalmente estas oportunidades profesionales no llegan. Ahora tal vez por los tiempos remotos una que otra sí, pero es bastante difícil y poder tener esa oportunidad para seguir fortaleciendo nuestras capacidades realmente es algo muy positivo. Veamos entonces, Leonardo, Luz Alanoca Valdivia, creo que tampoco confirmó, no está. No está. No está, vamos al siguiente.
A ver.
No está, no confirmó. Vamos, siguiente.
Marianela Gemín Chávez de Tumbes.
Marianela Gemín Chávez de Tumbes. Marianela, si está ahí, por favor, que nos confirme. Nos preguntan si la certificación para ascenso, nombramiento, sí, la certificación, entiendo, es de 60 horas de cada curso, en el caso de los de metodología, y se hacen los 3 cursos de Speaking, Listening, Language Forms and Language Assessment, son 180. Recuerden que para ascenso Y para contrato, por ejemplo, el mínimo de horas es de 36 horas y entiendo que cada uno tiene 60, así que está pasando la cantidad de horas. Y en el caso de ascenso, el mínimo es 90 horas, haciendo 2 cursos y estarían sumando porque incluso pueden ser sumatorias. Eso es lo que indica la norma, ¿no? Yo siempre ando leyendo toda la normativa para estar atenta porque siempre nos consultan los teachers el tema de la certificación y al menos en instituciones particulares para los que postulan de repente a otro tipo de vacantes en instituciones privadas, pues este tipo de certificaciones son bastante valoradas también por ellos, ¿no? O en los colegios de alto rendimiento, ¿no? Bien, pasamos con Marianela Germín Chávez. Confirmó Marianela, teachers, ¿me ayudan? No está tampoco, ya. Vamos, siguiente. Lo vamos a hacer más rapidito ya. Ya se han ido a dormir todos ya. Por la hora, 8:40, Leo. Ya te hemos tenido.
A ver, Miguel Tuya Jamancarodolfo, de Lima. Ah, no, perdón, sí, correcto, así, de Lima.
Creo que es Rodolfo Miguel.
Ah, ya, le cambié, disculpe, Rodolfo Miguel Tuya Jamán, de Lima.
Algo así, ajá, de Lima. Rodolfo Miguel. Está ahí, Rodolfo Miguel de Lima. Veamos si es que está ahí. Si es que está ahí, por favor, que escriba en el chat. Ya vamos a dar solo 15 segundos. Creo que va a tener que ser rapidito. Sabemos que también hay cierta diferencia en la transmisión cuando se hace desde Zoom hasta Facebook. Hay una demora de algunos cuantos segundos. Así que imagino que por esa... Aunque ahorita quien veo, bueno, creo que ya salió Marianela. Yo lo siento mucho. Ahorita acabo de leer recién, Isabel. No. Entonces, pasamos. No está Miguel, no está Rodolfo Miguel. Pasamos, rapidísimo, por favor. Pasamos.
Natividad Marleni Mamani Quispe, de Cusco.
Natividad Marleni Mamani Quispe, de Cusco. Vamos a esperar a partir de este momento unos 15 segundos. Sí, no se preocupen, vamos a enviar toda la información de lo que Mr. Mercado ha estado compartiendo el día de hoy sobre los cursos y a ver, es que estoy leyendo y tratando de ver que no se me vaya el nombre, sobre todo lo compartido, sobre el examen internacional, que me ha parecido muy, muy interesante. Ya, a ver, acá está. Marlene Mamani Quispe, creo que Claudia Helen Agramonte Quispe, no es. Bien, pasamos al siguiente. Yo pienso que sí, ya pasamos. ¿Ya está ahí? Nati Mar Mamani es o no es? No es, ¿no? ¿O sí? Por favor, si me ayudan los administradores, acabo de leer a Nati Mar Mamani presente. ¿Sí? ¿Es ella? Sí, ya dijo presente. Sí, es ella. Sí, por favor lo pueden fijar. Ahora sí, Nati. Mira, Marlene, qué suerte que tiene Miss Marlene de Cusco, que se ha llevado esta media beca. Se ha esperado, creo, justamente para que ella sea la ganadora. Muchísimas gracias, Leonardo, por haber tenido este gesto con la comunidad de English Teachers in Perú. Muchísimas gracias por compartir también todas estas oportunidades de capacitación y gracias por tener también siempre esa preferencia con la comunidad, por esos precios accesibles también para los maestros y toda esa información se les va a enviar. El día de hoy nos despedimos, todo el equipo administrativo. Vamos a recordar los nombres rápidamente de las dos ganadoras. Patricia Salazar Gómez, de la beca completa, y Natividad Mamani, de Cusco. Nos despedimos todo el equipo administrativo el día de hoy. Podemos encender nuestras camaritas, por favor. Y cambiamos de repente la vista, creo que es mi vista. Ya está, ahora sí. Y Y muchísimas gracias a todos los miembros de nuestra comunidad que nos han acompañado. No se preocupen, han quedado registrados todos sus correos, asistencias, se les va a compartir toda la información. Nos despedimos. Miss Ángela Salazar Barreda ha estado con ustedes hoy. Miss Miriam Córdoba Soto, Miss Zulita Chutden, Zulamita, Miss Kevin Laura. Ay, Miss Kevin me vas a matar. Mr. Kevin Laura de la Cruz. Mírame, ya está. Y por supuesto, el excelente ponente que nos ha acompañado el
Muy
día
amable, muy
de
gentil.
hoy, Mr. Leonardo Mercado.
Muchas gracias por el honor.
También al teacher José Ortega Cerruto, administrador que siempre está detrás de toda la transmisión y que maneja todo este tema del sorteo y el programa y siempre está apoyándonos. Todos nos despedimos, que tengan muy buenas noches. Bye bye, teachers.
Thank you. Bye.